So, Peacemaker. So, James Gunn's Peacemaker has finally hit HBO Max, and I was going to upload my review yesterday after just seeing episode 1. I thought, I've seen episode 1, I'll do like a, first impressions review, but I enjoyed it so much so that I thought, no, I need to talk about all 3 episodes. Now, this isn't going to be like a scene-by-scene breakdown of where you could spot Batmite in a corner of that little wardrobe of this building. No. This is going to be one of those overall impression, as comprehensive as I can make it, reviews of the first 3 episodes. It is a bit difficult anyway when they drop 3 episodes at once for me to do like a scene-by-scene, things you missed kind of breakdown. But overall, this does feel like the right kind of time, especially with this 3-episode drop, to make an overall, what do I think of Peacemaker? Is Peacemaker any good? Because that is one of the most fascinating things when going into this. The discourse surrounding Peacemaker, ever since the Suicide Squad, people have been thinking, and I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but it would be a weird elephant in the room if I didn't acknowledge that people, for the most part, were thinking, why are they making a Peacemaker show? Now, I wasn't necessarily one of those people, but I always like to try and have 2 feet on both sides of the fence, right? So I always like, I can understand there's a lot of shows out there, a lot of characters that people wish could get, for example, an HBO Max kind of production, a character have their own iteration in a live-action show, and then, comes out Suicide Squad, which a lot of people really enjoyed, James Gunn's vision there. Probably one of my favorite comic book movies of that year, last year. I don't know what year I'm in anymore. But, I understand still how, yes, John Cena's Peacemaker was pretty entertaining in that movie with Bloodsport, this, that, and the other, but they were thinking, but really? A whole HBO Max show? And I get that apprehension. I mean, obviously in that movie, we were sold on his character to a certain extent, but I do understand the overall kind of vibe was like, what? Really? Yeah, okay, we'll check it out, I suppose. And that's where I was at. I was like, I'm going to check it out. I really resonate with James Gunn's work. I'm a big fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And I always am in line with a lot of his humor that he implements into his productions and stories and stuff. So when I saw Peacemaker, I was going into it just thinking, as I said, I'm going to watch the first episode and give my thoughts on it. But I'm here late because I enjoyed it so much that I had to watch all 3. Now, I'm not saying this is the greatest show of all time or anything like that, but I do need to give credit where it's bloody due, because James Gunn obviously had such faith and such vision for this character that he saw an opportunity. And whether people were thinking, why this character? Why not choose another set of characters to... And James Gunn himself has come out and said, and I'm very much so abbreviating and paraphrasing here, that he had a lot of opportunity to do stories about whomever, whatever, or wherever, right? But he chose Peacemaker. And after seeing these 3 episodes, you can honestly bloody see why this man wanted to pursue this story. You can tell that this work that he did with just 3 episodes so far wasn't just something that he did because he had to do it. It was definitely a labor of love, or at least that's kind of what I'm getting from this, because the first 3 episodes told a very entertaining story. At no point was I thinking this is dragging or like, what is this? It was just thoroughly entertaining through and through. I think one of the best things that, the cocktail that James Gunn has is that he often takes charge or helms productions where the show is so self-aware of its own kind of flavor and tone that anything within within the confines of this story just works so well. For example, this is a weird comparison in a sense, but let's talk a bit about the humor for a couple of minutes. For example, there are other shows and movies, like let me just talk about one of the most recent reviews that I did, No Way Home, where as much as I enjoyed the movie, a lot of jokes in that film just kind of were missed for me. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion because a lot of people love MCU humor, but the reason why I think that this show works so well for me, as well as the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, is because other productions, not just No Way Home, they often kind of shift tone sometimes. Like obviously there needs to be serious moments. There's humor placed in moments that are meant to be serious that kind of makes me feel a bit kind of weird with what tone they're trying to achieve in said scene. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say there, but comparing that to something like Peacemaker, where it's in this very arc of a story season long with the characters and the premise and everything they're doing episode to episode is wholly, the whole time, fit within this lens of comedy and self-aware sarcasm and just you know, it lives and breathes that. So I feel like when I go into this, I know what to expect with James Gunn. It's not one of those ones where I'm trying to constantly question if that was an appropriate moment for humor, because I don't know if that fits with the tone that this movie is also trying to strive for, or this show is trying to strive for. And I feel like that's what some other things do. But with a James Gunn thing, you know what you're going into. But he also manages to achieve other feelings in the audience member, believe it or not that any of us really properly thought we'd feel some kind of empathy for Peacemaker, but they managed to even do that, and it's what the Guardians films managed to achieve as well, despite the littered James Gunn humor in there, the cute kind of, you know, animal or something else that he manages to put into each production, such as Baby Groot or Rocket Raccoon, but in this we have Eagly. There are moments that kind of make you not just laugh at this show as like, haha, look at Peacemaker, he's blowing people up. You do feel a little bit of kind of empathy for him in a weird way. And even the characters like Harcourt or Leota or whoever, there are little, you know, hints of where they even start to kind of look at the product of what he's become. And it's more of the situation that we believe that this man is doing everything that he feels like he believes he's doing the right thing. Yes, that sometimes comes across in a wrong way, but I think the ultimate feeling is a bit of pity. The first episode gets this across quite well with his father, and we heard quite a bit about his father and the Suicide Squad, etc., etc. But his father's constantly shitting on him whenever he's in his presence. You see that Peacemaker himself is going through a little bit of, I don't want to quite call it an existential crisis, but especially with this butterfly mission that he's on in the first 3 episodes, especially what he has to do in the 3rd episode with who the targets are. Obviously, he's not just an outright kind of evil jackass of a person. Like, they make Peacemaker a very likable, entertaining character in this show. And if anything, he's always trying to make sure he doesn't say something inappropriate, which kind of adds to the humor of those scenes anyway. He's always trying to conduct himself. This is what I mean. You believe the character believes he is doing the right thing at all times. And I think that's the kind of thing that makes him a bit more likable as you watch episode to episode to episode, even though sometimes he does very naively and ignorantly say something that really does get him a slap across the face. This is what I mean about the self-awareness of this show, and just any James Gunn production for that matter, in how, because of its such adopted identity, which again, I think is so strong when it comes to James Gunn handling his own projects that way, because other productions try to do this cocktail of where they add the funny thing in, but then try and make a lot of serious moments, or add those funny moments in the serious moments, but this, it's just so strong when they just own it and blend in little trinkles of like story that kind of makes you feel a bit more, such as we might have a moment where Peacemaker in episode 3 is talking to Harcourt, like, and she's looking through the glass, but you can tell they're starting to get to know each other a bit. You're starting to like the characters, of whom, you know, if you would have asked me, would I like Amanda Waller's team expanded upon, like John or Harcourt or whoever, right? I would have just been like, you know, okay, I enjoyed them in the Suicide Squad film, but like, I wouldn't have expected to enjoy those extra characters in Peacemaker, but I do. I really, really like, just within 3 episodes, even within the first episode, I was like, damn, they're actually writing some good material that I am not getting bored of. From the beginning of the episode when Peacemaker just picks up and he has his clavicle replaced, to talking to the janitor in the corridor, to then it gets to the dinner scene later on, it all feels like, damn, I feel like this is going to be a fun ride. It doesn't just feel like those characters like Harcourt, John, or Leota or whatever, or even Clemson, are extra accessories. They all within the 3 episodes, despite everything that's going on with setting up the larger butterfly alien invasion storyline threat that needs to be addressed as the main season plot, they manage to give these little moments to characters which really kind of make them expanded upon and make you kind of care about them a lot more than what I was ever anticipating. For example, Harcourt, there's clearly a lot more to her. She's fairly ambitious because after high school she went for the CIA, she went from the DOD to Argus, that's how Waller found her, but you get those little inklings of story, like when Peacemaker's trying to get to know her a bit more, you can tell behind her tough exterior that maybe, just maybe, she will be willing to kind of get to know Peacemaker, and she has a bit of a softer side. Or with John, yes, he is quite a lot like the Suicide Squad self, but he is kind of just that guy who people take the piss out of, but he does bark back, and he gets his own little triumphant moments, like with Judo Master in the third episode, and just some hilarious moments where Clemson's just having an absolute go at him for framing Peacemaker's father that ends up getting him arrested. Just little newbie oversights that all just, again, kind of adds another chain to the comedy that just doesn't really seem to fail for me. Then you got freaking Amanda Waller's daughter, which is just absolutely fantastic, because I feel like what they're doing with her is just making, all while she's the complete opposite of her mother through how she has a lot of empathy. She's never killed anyone before. They get into the roots of that character there with her having to almost kill someone, but she doesn't do it, and Harcourt does it. Yet there are other kind of moments that you do see a bit of her mother in her, with the fact that she's lying, and she's keeping that from the team, and she's lying very, very well, because they obviously don't have an inkling of a suspicion that she's Amanda Waller's daughter, but also she is only doing this for a paycheck, and all the while it's giving her a bit of insight from the others' commentary about how, oh, what if they're a decoy team that Amanda Waller set up? Because as Harcourt says, I saw what Waller is capable of in the Suicide Squad film, so they start questioning each other as to, like, really who put on that butterfly in the first episode to go after Peacemaker. And this is what I mean, like, you see, like, Leota there just thinking, man, like, my mum really, really must be bad. Don't even get me started, I mean, I am gonna get started, on the music, the score. With James Gunn, I think you expect this by now. Like, I think that's needless to say. And, you know, when it comes to stuff like this, I almost didn't expect such a loaded soundtrack, because the amount of money that must have been blown to achieve some of the songs that they put on just simple car rides when Eagly is kind of popping his head out the window, to just even subtle moments. They really got a good soundtrack for this show, and I do think that really adds to the prestige of James Gunn's work. That's not to say that everything else that he, you know, puts on the chessboard, like, they've all earned their own merit, but it does make you think, if this show didn't have that same soundtrack in those moments that just really gel together so well, it kind of would make you think, would that have been as cool? I mean, I'm sure it would be, but, like, it's just the fact that I'm trying to point out how much more rich and how much more of a unique seal and stamp of James Gunn's it is to put on those moments throughout the episodes that just really make you kick back and think, not only did I chuckle in this moment, but you're just enjoying the goddamn music in that moment that just perfectly complements whatever's going on, whether that's Peacemaker running away from a freaking metahuman and the record's playing in the background, and it just turns into a sprawling mess from there on out. And of course, there's some simple humor from where he's just going balcony to balcony and hurting himself. That's just very typical humor, but then it just carries it on to something else, Like, I really laughed my ass off, and it takes quite a bit to get me going that way, because sometimes jokes, I just think, okay, I can see why that's funny, but it just didn't hit me. But I laughed my ass off when he activated the sonic boom, and he was just standing there while he's just sitting there like a little kid after the little bubble shield came off him, just like, oh, and for all I know, that is the thumbnail of this video, and freaking the butterfly just went, well, she got obliterated, quite literally. This series, within those 3 episodes, just keeps providing just hilarious moments like that to episode 2, when he gets back in the apartment to get his stuff back, another record starts playing, or it flipped it over or whatever. It just continuously capitalizes off the momentum it had already set up. And they're very self-aware of when an audience was probably really enjoying said moment, to the point of where they're really teeing you up for the next ride, the next part of the roller coaster, where you've already been down that bit and you think it might be over, but nope, there's another bit that will get your adrenaline going again. And I know I'm coming across really positive about this show, but I'm really trying to be as candid as I can here, and off the rush of the first 3 episodes, I really, really do support Peacemaker. It's like a really good time. It's one of those ones which I think, if anything, really benefited off of subverting the expectations of the audience, or should I say the general audience, because I'm not going to pretend like there weren't some hardcore supporters thinking, I trust James Gunn no matter what he's doing, he is going to do something good with this because he chose that. I'm sure there were a lot of people out there who were like that, but let's just assume the general audience were kind of scratching their heads, maybe going into it with a bit of doubt, or in the weeks leading up to it with thinking, oh, I don't really care for Peacemaker. When you see it, I think it does nothing but favors with how entertaining this show is, and that is the pure word, entertainment. This is it personified. This is freaking entertainment. I can't put it any other way. Even the intro, it takes quite a bit for me to think, should I skip this? Because the intro to the show, again, talking about self-awareness, which only helps this show, yeah, and they're not embarrassed by it. Like, the intro is just hilarious. You have all of the characters acting in character doing that dance, and it's just like they're almost being commanded by a supervillain to do this. It's just so funny. Like, even the freaking intro of each episode, like, you have to be borderline strange to want to skip that, because I just think I'm just gonna watch this again. It's just freaking hilarious. I mean, sure, this show still might not be for absolutely everyone, because they still might be going into it, watching it, saying, okay, I enjoyed this bit, but like, no, that humor still isn't for me, because I still understand and identify at the end of the day, there is a lot of humor in this show. Like, even when Peacemaker is escaping after the butterfly incident in the first and second episode, he comes across the couple. I believe one of them is from For All Mankind. I recognize seeing him, which is pretty cool. And then the wife, Amber, he's been with him for like 8 years, starts getting the hots for Peacemaker, and they actually end up together with Vigilante, lo and behold. Even that moment I found pretty funny, because he had to tie them up. But like, you could argue maybe for you and what you envision for the DCEU, I can understand this perspective, that it's too outside what maybe your vision is. Because I can already imagine, I just wanted to bring this up, like Vigilante, Adrian Chase. Some people may think, like, this isn't how I envision Vigilante, and I'd be like, you know what, I can understand what you're going for there. In this show, Vigilante is made out as basically a Peacemaker fanboy. I'm pretty sure he really does have feelings for him. He really admires him, and possibly more than that. And I personally, through the lens of James Gunn's, imagine an Instagram filter of James Gunn just swept over this world, this character, or these characters. That is exactly what you're getting. Vigilante might not be what you envisioned from maybe even the CW's Arrow, where it is like an actual kind of vigilante, and where you could imagine in a DCEU, in your vision, there could be such a cooler, brooding version. But here, they've obviously equipped him as like a quippy kind of character who, in my opinion, really works well within the story. I really am enjoying how he is involved. I mean, for crying out loud, in the third episode, where Peacemaker himself couldn't quite go through with executing the butterflies, because it wasn't just the senator or whatever, it was his family as well. You had frickin' Vigilante on the scopes, just humming the whole time. It's like, Mama Bear, Papa Bear. I think it perfectly complements the show, but I do acknowledge still how this still might not be for everyone. I mean, hell, there's even parts of me that even thinks, yeah, sure, I could imagine in a parallel world where they did something like this, where Vigilante was like more maybe like the early version of the DCEU-esque tone to it. But again, I think if you're going into something like James Gunn and one of his works and one of his iterations, again, this is an adaptation, this is an iteration, and when you've given that to James Gunn, you should know what you're kind of expecting. And I think this has been raised before about, for example, Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. People were like, this isn't how Drax from the comics would be like. And I get what you're saying, but I think, again, you have to see what you're picking up the product of from the shelf. Just know that you're going in for a certain flavor, and that is what it is. Luckily for me, it really meshes well. But I think the bottom line of my point here is that I do get how maybe at the end of the day, James Gunn's vision of things is as popular as it can be, might not be for everyone. But I do think it still is for a lot of people, or even if you desire another vision of these characters, you can still maybe switch your brain off to that desire and still enjoy this for what it is. As far as the main story, I'm really excited to see this continue, honestly, because to me, I feel like this is a bit of a treat. It feels like a movie level, like the Suicide Squad production, but we're getting episode after episode after episode. So, with the Project Butterfly stuff, I'm really looking forward to seeing more metahuman stuff there. That's really entertaining, especially as it is technically DCEU level stuff. I mean, this is in the DCEU. Like, we're seeing like a continuation of a really big plot that is just being dealt with by other characters, while something else goes on over there with another movie. So when you see at the end of episode 3 all of these butterfly presents in across the whole globe, you know that it is an alien invasion that they're really working on stopping. Like, this is a big deal. But with Amanda Waller, you know there is other fishy stuff going on. For example, her call with her daughter Leota. She gave this this diary of Peacemakers, which had a cool little Wayne reference on there, so she could plant it in his house or whatever. And obviously Amanda Waller is up to something there, and I'm still gonna bet that there's still something else that is going on behind even what we know to suspect. So it makes sense with why they dropped 3 episodes as to why they wanted you to get to the end of the 3rd episode, because amongst all the hilarious stuff and then them encountering Judo Master and stuff, you realize that this is a really big threat. And even though they've come across a couple of butterflies already, you know there's going to be even more crazy, funny, wacko times ahead with all of the other trippy stuff that they are going to get into trying to take down, basically, this alien invasion. I mean, even the little things like when Peacemaker took like the little freaking miniature shuttle. I wondered why that little alien thing was so small. I thought the ship would get even bigger, but obviously with seeing that they're actually butterflies, that's what they fit into. That makes sense now. They're actually really small when they start to fly out. So you can see that a ton of them must have arrived on Earth in tiny, tiny little ships like that. One thing I am wondering is, how are they going to get rid of them all across the globe? Maybe they'll use something like Peacemaker's sonic boom or whatever to like eradicate all of them everywhere at once without affecting humans. I have absolutely no idea, but this goes beyond just a few targets. It seems that they're everywhere, and given the action and the hilarious moments that we've got into across the 3 episodes pertaining to this big butterfly threat so far, you know we are just still in for a hilarious time ahead. Other than that, guys, I don't know what more I can blurge on about really without just highly endorsing this show. If you haven't seen it yet and you've got to this part, take my word for it. If you kind of vibe what I'm into in this channel, what I enjoy to my tastes, whether that's Doom Patrol kind of comedy, and I'm not saying this is Doom Patrol level comedy through and through, it's just I really endorse this show. It is really well shot as well. That's something I completely left out, by the way. Like, James Gunn shot this very well. Like, the cinematography is really decent. Like, I would say through and through. That's another thing that I just appreciated on top of everything else. It is hilarious. It's genuinely got an interesting story there. You do care more about Peacemaker than probably you ever thought you would. And then that extends to the team members. They're not just accessories or comedy characters through and through, even though at the same time some of them are. It's kind of like you're really enjoying them a lot more than what you bloody thought you would. And like, we've got episodes and episodes still to come, and I think that this is a very much so little kind of shadow drop that happened that subverted people's expectations, because I don't think it was on many people's radars, but clearly it is good. It is bloody good. So guys, that is my review for Peacemaker episodes 1 to 3. Can't wait to see where it goes. I could have got into little things like, oh, how they confirmed Batmite in the DCEU and how he stands Batman and things, but all of that really does kind of speak for itself. Obviously, they've dropped 3 at once, and now it's going to be a weekly release, so let me know if you want me to break it down. I don't know if it's going to be so much breaky downy stuff episode to episode, because it might just be more of a cohesive comedy-esque kind of story, but who knows. If there's enough demand for it, I definitely will do an episode 4 individual video. But just like this video if you did enjoy it. Tell me if you've checked out Peacemaker yet, and if you really enjoy it as much as I do. Let me know if you disagree with me and you think, okay, Boba, I can see how it's entertaining, but I still don't think it's all that. And if you haven't watched it, have I encouraged you to watch it? Maybe this is saying something quite a lot, considering a lot of people out there just really didn't think that there would be much of anything. But anyway, guys, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this. Of course, we cover a lot here on the channel, from this to other things, to DC news, Marvel news, or whatever, Star Wars even, with the Book of Boba Fett at the minute. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, you can follow me more in the links in the top pinned comment, where you can find me on Twitter and other places. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow peacemakers, I suppose, in the next video. Goodbye.